So let us have a brief discussion on the chapter The Gandhian Way by the philosopher C.E.M. George. This is a long chapter, and to go by the general feedback, the most difficult in the entire textbook. This difficulty arises from a reason. There is a reason behind this difficulty, because this essay talks about abstract principles. You can see that in the slide. Abstract principles versus concrete results. Well, you take any social custom, religious ritual, or even political slogans. These things are concrete. You can see them, you can feel them, you can document them. But I repeat, behind every action, behind every manifestation, there is a principle which is abstract, which you cannot see. I would like to give an example, but before that, see this book. This is a rather old book published somewhere in the beginning of the 1990s, Anthropology, Contemporary Perspectives. If you want to know more about how human beings behave in the society and react to specific situations and crises, anthropology is a wonderful study of field. But unfortunately, anthropology is offered in just one or two places in Kerala. To the best of my knowledge, Kannur University is the only place where you can study anthropology, even though Kerala is so fertile as far as the materials for this subject are concerned. In this book, there is a chapter, that's the next slide, The Serpent Handling Religions of West Virginia in America. The Serpent Handling Religions of West Virginia. Okay, before proceeding any further, let us watch a short video.
This church in the heart of Appalachia is completely quiet just before the service begins, except for the creature inside this locked box. It's a rattlesnake, and it's rattling. It's one of 7 deadly snakes, about to be used in a wild ceremony in God's name. This is Pastor Andrew Hamlin. He's a 21-year-old serpent-handling pastor at the Tabernacle Church of God in La Folla, Tennessee. He, his wife, and the rest of this congregation practice Christianity much differently.
It is actually a report of CNN. The link is here, but even without the link, you can see the video. Please remember, this can be a bit scary if you are an ophidiophobic. Ophidiophobia is the irrational fear of snakes. Don't watch it, just skip it. I don't know whether you enjoyed it. I hope you saw the video. You can see the unusual, outlandish way in which people take whole bunches, clusters of snakes in their hand. Often they fling snakes to the ground, take them up again, and thrust the snakes into their shirts and blouses. Something we cannot even imagine. Well, you can see this actually, you can document this. The question is, why? What is the idea, belief, philosophy behind this? Of course, the author gives a lot of reasons, but anthropology is more concerned about description than explanation. Anthropologists record things as they are. They don't pay too much attention to historically or economically explain why. What I feel is that you can note a few logical points here. One is, these people are not afraid of death, but most of us are. And why are we afraid of death? Because death is uncertain. Even though most of us believe in heaven and hell, we are not sure that we will get a birth in heaven. So what happens? Death becomes an entry to uncertainty. But in the case of these people, there is no room for such a doubt. They are 100% sure that there is heaven, and more importantly, all of them will go to heaven. So naturally you may ask, why don't these people commit suicide? No, you cannot, because suicide is a cardinal sin. If you commit suicide, you are eternally damned. You will never get access to heaven. But here, this is not a suicide. You are playing with some creatures which are also God's creation. Accidentally, one snake may bite you, you die, but it is not suicide technically, so you can go to heaven. Actually, many people have died in this process, and I understand now it is illegal. That is what the CNN report says. But when this essay was published a few decades ago, it was not illegal. People were permitted to handle snakes as part of their worship. You may wonder what is the relation between Gandhi and a strange custom like this. Yeah, apparently there is no connection, but I am trying to drive a simple point home. There is an abstract principle behind every action. I hope we will get a clearer idea about this when we go along. Gandhi was a politician, but he was a philosopher too. For instance, he always supported trusteeship. He believed in autonomous, self-reliant villages. This is an economic program, but there is a philosophy behind it, which we cannot see, as I have told you many times. C.E.M. George is a philosopher, and he is more interested in the abstract principles rather than concrete results. That is why this essay becomes a bit difficult for some learners, but don't worry, once you understand this concept, well, it's going to be easy. I won't say it's going to be a walk in the park, but you can manage it. He talks about a few things before coming to the crux of the argument. The first point, please look at the slide, is heterodoxy in art and politics. Art and politics or morals. Heterodoxy means a radically different position. When you read the history of religions and civilizations, one thing is likely to strike you as strange. Most trailblazers, most radical thinkers have been criticized or killed. Right. Whether it is Jesus Christ or Socrates, everyone had to face death because of their positions, which were different from the existing positions. This attitude is called heterodoxy, and he tries to differentiate between how heterodoxy is treated in art on the one side and politics or morals on the other. Well, there are some radical artists, filmmakers, painters, singers, and so on. None of them have been assassinated, killed. But that is not the case in politics. Gandhi himself was assassinated in 1948 because his positions were too much for a person who belonged to an extreme right-wing organization. He had to pay heavily for his positions. But I don't think anyone has sung a singer for performing differently. We know a lot of maverick singers, but all of them are alive. They may or may not be successful, but their life is not directly at stake. But so what happens is that heterodoxy in politics or morals is denounced as propagandist wickedness. You deserve death. That is the way in which people behave when you come up with a radically different new position in politics and morals. In Malayalam, there is a poem by N.N. Kakkad. I'm not sure about the author. The title is Vazhivettunnavarodu. The poem tells us this. If there is an already trodden, well-established path, try it. Because if you attempt to blaze a trail, if you try to create a new system of thought, you will have a tough time. You may even die. Well, then he discusses Gandhi as a politician. As I told you, Gandhi was he was a versatile genius. He was a moralist, he was a vegetarian, he believed in naturopathy and homeopathy. Then he was a pacifist, he evolved political tools like satyagraha. Moreover, he was a prolific writer too. In most libraries, you can see the collected works of Gandhi, which runs into 100 volumes, I guess, very big in size. He wrote in Gujarati too. So he was multifaceted, he was versatile. But at the same time, he was a shrewd and effective politician too. And George states 3 points to explain the effectiveness of Gandhi as a politician. One is he was he was an expert. He was quite adroit in negotiation. He knew how to negotiate with anyone. Second one, he possessed astute political wisdom. He was reasonable. He knew when to stop, say satyagraha, when it wouldn't work. He was very practical. He was pragmatic. Then he was flexible and he was willing to compromise. So his expertise, his astute political wisdom, and finally his pragmatism, all these things made Gandhi an eminently successful politician. Even though he didn't get a chance to remain a politician in the post-independent period. Then he talks about two kinds of force. One is called the physical force and the other one is called the moral force. Remember one thing, the focus is on moral force. Physical force is something you can see. When a stronger boy or a girl beats another person, it's a manifestation, a display of physical force. Here he is very much concerned about the other aspect, moral force. Physical force is straight and simple, it is direct, and the physical force works because it evokes the fear of consequences. I am afraid of you because if I do not obey you, you may beat me up. That's the only reason. But the case of moral force is completely different. It is unique, it is more effective, it is more powerful. Even if a person resists it, he knows he is wrong and moral force is right. See, I may not be able to follow what you say, but I realize within the heart of my heart that you are right and I am wrong. This realization is a moral force. Then moral force exerts not power, but it is influence. By setting examples, you can influence other people and other people may follow you. So it is a matter of influence rather than power. And moral force can roughly be described as the effect produced by one human being upon the mind and actions of another. And moral force succeeds, it becomes effective, successful through the intuitive acknowledgement of moral superiority. So some of these terms are not so easy. For example, moral superiority, what is morality? Such questions are there, but for the time being we cannot address them. Because morality, just like culture, is a problematic thing. It keeps on changing. What was considered perfectly moral 100 years ago is immoral these days. Right? So morality is changing, but at any given point of time, a society and a people will have a set of norms about morality. Then he talks about the distinctive, unique virtue of humanity. Of course, this is a generalization because just like culture and morality, virtue also varies from place to place. According to C.E.M. George, the distinctive feature of humanity is moral force. It is not the physical force, but the moral force which distinguishes human beings from other creatures. And what is moral force? Again, we have got something like a definition. Moral force is a resultant combination of non-attachment to the self with a passionate apprehension of truth and disinterested attachment to principles. We will slightly expand and explain this. First point is, it's a combination of a few things. It's a combination of a few things. The components of this combination are: 1. Non-attachment to the self. That is, I am a human being, but I know I will die sooner or later. My existence on the earth is transient. So whatever I have, I am not emotionally attached to it. I lose some money, I don't mind. You become kind of stoic, S-T-O-I-C, this stoic attitude. Secondly, you passionate understanding of truth. It is not a coincidence that the autobiography of Gandhi is titled My Experiments of Truth. He was very much concerned about truth. So you should be passionately attached to truth. And finally, disinterested attachment to principles. You should follow certain principles, you should be attached to it, but that attachment should be disinterested. These are the three components which join hands to form a moral force. When you combine all these things, moral force is born. I request you to carefully read the slide again and again. Then he talks about genius. By the way, who is a genius? We may tend to say that a genius is a person. For example, we call Sachin Tendulkar a genius. It is true in a way, but we can understand genius a bit more strictly. Genius is a person who is capable of genuine or original thinking. Right. When a person comes up with completely new ideas, we have to call him a genius. And in that sense, Gandhi was a genius. Personally, I am not a fan of Gandhi. I have many disagreements with his political and moral positions. But he is a person we cannot deny. Right. I am not a Gandhi hater either. But I don't, in many things, I don't agree with him. And in a democracy, we have, or at least we should have, the freedom to disagree. There are certain aspects in Gandhi which have attracted me. One is his sense of inclusion. Even though he talks about Ramarajya as his political ideal, no one is left out. But my disagreement is he did believe in a Varna system. He didn't oppose Varna access. He was against untouchability, unapproachability, and resultant pollution. He wanted these aspects of caste to go, but he wanted to maintain the essentials of Varna system. That is why Dr. B.R. Ambedkar fiercely criticized him. Interestingly, Ambedkar is one person who is not included in our syllabus, except in political science. Okay, we hope we will be able to include Ambedkar in our syllabus in near future. So let us admit that Gandhi is a genius. Despite all our disagreements, at least my disagreements, a genius can save humanity. Because he can come up with new ways to solve disputes and disagreements between individuals and nations. And according to C.E.M. George, the methods of a genius are based on moral force, not on physical force. Well, because of advanced in science and technology, that's another paradox we have to address. Is science destructive or not? Is science emancipatory in itself? We are not going to say anything about that, but here the point is we have got very strong weapons of mass destruction. So that if there is a third world war, most probably all of us will be finished. That was not the case 150 years ago. Wars were territorially confined and their destructive potential was equally limited. But now things have changed. So this George opines that in such a technologically informed warfare, only original methods, only a genius's ideas and methods can save humanity. As I told you, Gandhi evolved some tools of his own. One was called Satyagraha, the other was civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is not exactly his original, but he put that into effective practice. Civil disobedience is it's very relevant as far as contemporary West is concerned because it is based on moral force. In the West, most conflicts are resolved by means of physical force. The stronger person always wins. But Gandhi has got a different take on things. Everyone is included and his methods are based on moral force. So, the net result is that moral force and the political programs based on them offer an alternative model in solving issues. So these are the main points that C.E.M. George discusses. Remember, the most important word is moral force. He talks about the defining features of human beings, how do human beings differ from animals, and what are the unique features, traits of Gandhi as a politician, and what is his take on solving issues, and why do we call Gandhi a genius, and what is the relevance of Gandhi's methods in the contemporary West. go through the textbook, because all I have said is a distilled essence of the essay. Many things have been left out. It is quite understandable. Go through the essay, and supporting materials will be uploaded soon. Thank you.